Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, the reunion. Let's watch.
Understand everything after was extremely hurtful for me to watch.
Have you and Mallory had a chance to
We've spoken,
discuss that?
We've spoken. But I mean, if I'm honest, like none of my anger went toward Mal. It went all toward Jared because he's my partner and he's the one who owes me loyalty. Mal doesn't owe me anything.
So they're watching the scene at the party where I think they're at least a little tipsy. Jarrett and Mal are talking, about how they were connecting in the pods, and Mal is saying she wishes that Sal was something different. I think she was saying that she wished Sal was more intense or more pursuing or something. I'm not exactly sure. More passionate, maybe, I think Mal was saying. Jarrett was saying, I would have been that for you. It's hard to know what Jarrett meant by that. If he was saying, well, Mal, you passed up a good thing. I'm with, Ayanna now, but, I think I would have been that for you. Or was he saying, I would have been that for you, so if you want to dump Sal and be with me. I think it's the former. We don't really know. So they're having that conversation, and then Ayanna watches that scene, which is rough. I mean, just imagine y'all out there, and maybe some of you actually have had this experience where you see a video with your current husband, your current partner, having an intense, romantic, intimate type conversation with someone else. That, even if you're like, that happened well before I knew you, it's going to kind of mess with your head. So in some ways, if some of these people were my clients, I would at least float the idea of not watching the show altogether, because you might see things that will burn into your brain. Now, Ayanna seems to be taking it pretty well. She says that it hurt her, but she's not triggered in this moment. I think they would have watched it maybe a couple weeks prior to this taping. Who knows? And another thing that she's doing, which I think is very mature and wise, which is, I didn't get mad at Mal. I got mad at Jarrett, which makes total sense. And it always kind of boggles me on these shows or in culture when the Ayannas of the world get mad at Mal. It's like, what? Like, Jarrett's your partner. So good on Ayanna for getting mad at Jarrett instead of Mal.
I think at that point I had chosen Ayanna, and I was very safe in my choice. And having that conversation should have never happened, or I could have tailored it a different way. And I definitely want to apologize to you for, making you look crazy. I'd never want to do that ever again. And that conversation should have never happened.
Okay, so I believe Jarrett. And I think there's a lot of different factors. And I think I talked about this at the time, that they are potentially in one frame. And for Jarrett, I think this is accurate. He fell in love with two women and decided that he wanted to propose to Mal, whom he was in love with or had extreme feelings for. I mean, just imagine how, the feelings that you have to propose to someone. And of course, a lot of people on the show didn't fall in love and didn't propose, and they didn't make it to that second stage. So he had a, very intense feeling for Mal and Ayanna. Mal says no, and he goes to Ayanna, and then maybe a day later or a couple days later, he sees Mallory for the very first time. In the pods, he hadn't seen her face to face, had fallen in love with her deeply, had proposed to her, and then he's with Ayanna, but then a couple days later, meets Mallory for the first time. Intoxication. It would make total sense that Jarrett and Mal would still have some residual feelings towards each other. It's not uncommon to have residual feelings that last for the rest of your life, let alone a few days later. So the fact that there was some energy there, some romantic attraction that did not eclipse his feelings towards Ayanna, clearly, because he the next day woke up with Ayanna and stayed with her, makes total sense. So, and doesn't necessarily indicate that Jarrett doesn't really love Ayanna. We don't know.
Writing and will write for the rest of your lives. But I do have to ask Sal, because you were the fourth kind of part of that equation. How did that make you feel?
It was really uncomfortable. Guys, that was disrespectful, y'all. Either one of you could have stopped that conversation immediately.
Yeah, totally. And Sal has every right to be angry and to call it out. Either one of y'all could have ended that conversation right away. You were both engaged to someone else at the time. Why would you have that conversation? So I think what this indicates is that Sal had legit feelings for Mallory, and it was exhibited that night when, after the conversation between Jarrett and Mal happened, they interviewed Sal, and he looked pretty intoxicated, but very distraught, very distressed, I think crying, talking about how he just wants to go home. Like, I just want to go home. This is hurtful. So I think what we're getting right now is his, another reaction, which makes total sense. And I think what this indicates is that he truly did love Mallory and really did want to be with her.
And
Yeah,
Jared,
but
I appreciate, hold on. I appreciate you saying those things too, man. But you told me it was a fucking joke, bro.
It 100% was a joke.
But why is it
It
inappropriate?
was an inappropriate joke for sure, but it was
Okay.
a joke.
Cool, man. It would have been nice to know that, though.
So I'm a little confused. Sal is saying that Jarrett said it was a joke. What was a joke? That the conversation was a joke? I'm not sure. But at the very least, it sounds like Jarrett was downplaying what had happened with Mallory in that conversation at the bar. And I've been hypothesizing from the beginning, and I really have no idea. But my guess, or not a guess, but one possible scenario is that Mal and Sal fell in love, or Sal fell in love with Mal in the pods. Jarrett fell in love with Ayanna and Mal. Mal was unsure about everyone, but was definitely not like Jarrett, no. And when she said no to Jarrett, maybe by contrast, she's like, well, I like Sal more than Jarrett, so maybe that's good enough to kind of... Now, there's another scenario where Mal was passionately in love with Sal in the pods and outside, and everything that we saw in terms of the season is in line with that. But I don't know, it just kind of... And, I don't know if you watch this channel to watch me speculate as to what happened, but in terms of just understanding human behavior, I wouldn't be surprised, and I've said this before, but I'll say it one last time, is that I think Sal is deeply in love with Mal, that Mal was kind of on the fence. They go to that bar, Jarrett and Mal. I think Jarrett was having residual feelings, but still in love with Ayanna, and was expressing that with Mal. I think Mal was expressing, because you notice Mal because Jarrett was kind of like inviting, and Mal didn't really take the bait. She didn't say like, well, how about we date? She didn't say anything like that. She didn't seem to even have that kind of energy around it. In fact, Jarrett was the one kind of prodding. That's not the ring. I would have been that way for you. Mal, I think, was just kind of complaining. So I think Mal said yes to Sal, thinking, I do feel a connection, but I'm not really quite sure. Meets him, feels no chemistry when they met. And we saw that. The interviews right after, she's like, I just don't know. Convinces herself to ride this thing out, either because it's a reality TV show and she needs to ride it out to the end, or she's thinking, well, maybe I'll fall in love with him. They go to the bar that night. She has the conversation with Jarrett, and Jarrett's kind of calling this out, and she's just like, yeah. And I don't know, she seems kind of defeated and kind of miserable, like, I'm not feeling it. I think that's what's generating the kind of complaints that are cognitively coming out of her mouth, what she's stating. But I think underneath it all is just like no chemistry with Sal. And Mal seems like the sort of person that she's either on or off, that when there's no chemistry, it's just like she's done. She seems like a lot of people are that way. I think I don't know. Anyway, Then Sal sees that conversation, is sensing that something's wrong anyway, regardless of seeing Jarrett and Mal have the conversation. He gets really sad. He starts to cry. They go back to the hotel that night. Sal gets upset and starts saying things to her. She indicates to him, yeah, this is off. I don't feel it. Let's just pack it in. The next day they wake up and they're like, well, let's write it out to the end. Maybe the producers are pressuring them. Maybe they want to be on a reality TV show. I don't know. Maybe they feel bad. Maybe they're like, maybe this will work out in the end. I don't know. And then they proceed to go through the steps, but half-heartedly. But still, Sal is in love with her and is heartbroken. He feels like he's left at the altar way back when, before the wedding even takes place. They have the wedding. They know what's going to happen beforehand. They tell their family and friends, maybe. They go up on the altar, and like with Deepti and Shake, the rejected one takes the burden of saying no, so it kind of saves face a little bit. And they already knew that the relationship was over long ago. It's not without its emotion. It's not without its disappointment. But that to me, makes the most sense. And I know some of you have a different take, and I don't know. But, there's other scenarios too where they were totally in love, and then at the last minute, they decided. Another scenario was Sal never really loved her. But the fact that he's angry right now, I don't know. I think that says something.
And I'll apologize to you. I'll be a man, because I had no reason to kind of downplay the situation or anything like that. But it was a joke. It was taken out of a context, bad joke. I apologize.
So he's saying it's a joke. I don't think that's accurate. I think that I could see how he would phrase it that way without realizing that it was filmed and that it would be seen, because it certainly didn't look like he was just making a joke, right?
And literally coming from the pause after that emotional ass interaction, and then not even having any chance to talk, to just be like, hey, how are you feeling? So that, going into that, I was extremely nervous and anxious.
Okay. It's interesting to hear Mallory talk a little bit more. I think she comes across as a very stoic person, a very level or even-keeled. But I think underneath it all, she's actually suffering much greater than other people. We've heard little indications of that, and I think we're hearing another indication of that. So she's saying what I would imagine would be true. It's just that was an extremely emotional, overwhelming experience to go into the pods, to come out, to see everyone for the first time, to see Jarrett for the first time, to have a conversation. It was overwhelming to me. And I also wonder if she's expressing, it was overwhelming to see Sal for the first time and to have a bunch of mixed feelings about what was happening. At that early stage, I did not know what was going on in my mind. And when Jarrett came up to me and talked to me, I was just being honest. And so it was a very confusing, overwhelming time, which I absolutely can imagine. And I think it was disrespectful to Sal and Ayanna for them to be having that, particularly Jarrett, honestly, the way he was talking. I mean, Mal wasn't being great. She was complaining, but Jarrett was he was doubling down. Mal wasn't saying to Jarrett that his relationship with Ayanna was somehow a falsitude or something. So Jarrett was kind of doing that. And so I think Mallory just seemed like she was overwhelmed and I suspect struggling with, I don't think I feel it with Sal,
Because I knew that this was going to be a conversation that had to happen. I definitely apologize to Ayanna because that conversation went on longer than it should have. Unfortunately, I took a couple shots before that because I was nervous as shit.
I still think it was inappropriate to have.
Okay, she says she took a couple shots because she was nervous, and I was, putting that into the equation. So there's this false notion out there that a drunk man's words is a sober man's thoughts, which is sometimes true, but sometimes not. Sometimes when we're intoxicated, our brains are not actually functioning correctly. They're not. The functions of the brain, the function of the prefrontal cortex, the function of emotion is impaired. and we will think and say and feel things that we are not our sober thoughts. They're literally just other impulses that normally have checks and balances on them. Like, for instance, you're intoxicated in a relationship and you have a pet peeve about your partner that bothers you. And when you're sober, it bothers you, but you kind of let it go because you're like, well, we've already tried to work that thing out. It's not a big deal. I can cope with it. And that's really my issue. I get triggered when they do that kind of thing. But when you're drunk, you might just completely lay into it. I can't believe you did that. You're a horrible person. I don't want to be married to you. You wake up the next day and you're like, why did I even say those things? That doesn't necessarily mean that those are your drunk statements were your true thoughts. It could be, but it's not necessarily true. So Mal is saying, I had a couple shots. I was nervous. That indicates, I think, a fair amount of anxiety that she doesn't show. I think she's pretty good at hiding that, which lends itself to avoidant attachment. Again, we use the show as a jumping off point. I don't know if this is true about Mallory, but when we are emotionally neglected growing up, we learn there's really no use in signaling our emotions outside of our inner world because no one will respond. And when no one responds, or when there's a lack of general response, consistent response, it hurts to signal and to be rejected. So it's better just to not signal, and also maybe just not even feel, or try not to feel. Two of the things will happen as adults that we will observe. One is that avoidant attached individuals are very hard to read. In fact, if you have ever been told that you're hard to read by partners, there's a chance that you have avoidant attachment. People that are preoccupied are very easy to read. People who are secure are generally easier to read. Anyway, point is that avoidant people, they learn to shut down and they don't show it. And two, they don't know how to cope. And they also will suffer, they're more prone to suffer from anxiety. Because when you're generally emotionally neglected at a 0 to 3, you develop a chronic fear of the world and of yourself, because when you're 2 years old and you're left to your own devices, there's a lot of threats, there's a lot of danger in the world, and you feel that fear without anyone soothing you, and thus you have this chronic fear throughout the rest of your life. The third thing is, they will tend to drink a lot to cope because it's something that you can do on your own. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to show it. And you can just numb yourself through marijuana or alcohol or heroin or whatever. And so I don't know if that's what we're seeing, but, I'll just throw that out there so y'all can think about your own lives.
When we were on our honeymoon, what kind of investment is that in our relationship?
I was fully invested in my choice and my decision. I just felt like after the emotional conversation we had, we never really got to talk.
It was just a very inappropriate conversation.
I'm going to rewind this because I've been from the beginning, or from the middle point of the season, really, kind of frustrated with the way in which the Sal Mal story is being presented, because I'm pretty sure I'm just confirmation biasing this situation, because it certainly, I'm going to rewind it because I think we're seeing signs that my narrative that I put forth earlier, it might be something like that, because Sal is still upset, which indicates, I think, that he was deeply hurt, which indicates that he was deeply in love and he was in it to win it. And we're not seeing that kind of reaction from Mal. And we're also kind of seeing a conclusion that I think Sal is coming to, that, look, you made me feel like you were in love with me in the pods. And then outside the pods, it's like you just pulled the rug out for that. That's the way it kind of seems to me. Let's rewind.
When we were on our honeymoon, what kind of investment is that in our relationship?
I was fully invested in my choice and my decision. I just felt like after the...
Right. I think they're having a fight or a conversation that they've had behind the scenes where, I don't know, I could be just confirmation bias by me, but I wonder if for Sal, he's like, you didn't try. And that's a frequent thing that people will say, right, in the situation. It's like, we were in love in the pods. You said yes. We were on the same, page. Now, did Sal propose to her, or was the other way around? Either way, they agreed to get married. And then immediately there was a pullback from Mal. This is all me just speculating. And then Sal's like, you're not trying. You're not trying to make it work. You just turned something off inside of you, and you never gave us a chance, and you just wasted what we had in the pods. Or I could have been with someone else if you didn't waste my I could imagine Sal having those kinds of thoughts. Let's hear what she says here.
Conversation we had, we never really got to talk.
Like, it was just a very inappropriate conversation that could have been tailored a different way, and I'll own that.
Well said.
And I don't want to stir any pots or anything. And like, Mallory, I know that we gave it an honest shot.
Safe to say that a lot happened in Mexico.
Okay, so Sal's saying we gave it an honest shot. And Mal says, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just confirmation biasing this whole situation. I still think my hypothesis fits the best, but I don't know. I mean, I'd have to ask Mallory and Sal and have them tell me the truth about what was going on behind the scenes. Maybe they'd say, no, we were totally in love. We totally want to get married until that very last moment up on the altar, and it just wasn't there for us, and so we decided to say no. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. But I think part of it, just as a viewer, it's not really as a therapist, but as a viewer, since we know that there are conversations that happen behind the scenes that are not congruent with their front-facing demeanor and behavior on the show, it feels like frustrating, or I don't know, unnerving somehow to be kind of invested in these people's lives and then to see incongruences and wonder, wait, am I being lied to in this moment? Because I'm investing my heart into this. I want them to work, but did they already have a conversation? Maybe that's what I'm getting into. I don't know. It's not really a therapist thing to say. It's just as a viewer.
Relationship. Did that happen?
Yeah, we met for coffee and we chatted. But I think at the end of the day, we, that, I don't know, the connection just wasn't really there. And we just kind of understood that we were, maybe it didn't make sense to really continue on.
Okay. So again, I keep trying to find confirmation so that as a citizen watching the show, I can feel like I have a grasp on what was happening emotionally, because that wedding altar scene just it looked so odd to me. When I think about, anyway, so Mallory is saying we met up afterwards, but there wasn't a connection. And I wonder if for Mallory, she knew that for a long time. And I just keep reading into things. Let's see if there's some more data.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like of all the couples this season, for whatever reason, you two were the hardest for me to figure out. It always seemed like there was a little bit more going on,
Thank you. I don't know who that guy is as the host, but he's saying, is his name Nick something? Anyway, last time I said that, I remember when I watched season 1, I was like, I don't know who that dude is. And then everyone laughed at me in the comments. Is he a famous person? I'm old. I don't know things. Anyway, so, but God bless him. He's saying, it seemed like something was going on behind the scenes. You were hard to figure out. Yes. So part of my frustration is that I would ask my wife, I'd be like, what do you think's going on with Mal and Sal? And then she'd say, Mal and Sal? Is that what they're calling them? And I'm like, well, I think online people are calling them Mal and Sal. I mean, it's kind of what they call them, Sal. She's like, anyway. And my wife would be like, no, I think Mallory seems very much into Sal. And I'd be like, oh, maybe I'm just not seeing it right. But I don't know. There's something about this couple that I was just like, I'm not hearing the whole story, and it feels, I don't know, there's just, when you invest yourself, you just want to know. Anyway, so let's hear what they say.
There was just things that happened, that I just don't really feel comfortable saying, because it's pointless now. It's our history, I just call it karma, call it whatever, but it's just I just don't think it's necessary to say.
Good man.
So God knows what that means. I mean, that could just mean 1,000 different things, but it certainly fits with my with my proposed hypothesis. I mean, it would fit, but of course, what he said would fit with a lot of different things.
We shared like a very strong connection really because of this experiment, but we're very different. Like, I think in the way that we really communicated or, operated, like a lot of times, like, disagreements because we just weren't communicating necessarily the right way.
Okay. It kind of sounds like the two of them are referring to fights that were happening behind the scenes. I think there's some indications of that. I wonder what was going on there. Again, it kind of still fits within my hypothesis, which I don't have any evidence for, but somehow it just feels emotionally satisfying for me to believe that's what happened. So I can imagine a situation where she is, at the very least, on the fence with him after seeing him in person, and also just confused and not knowing what to do and wondering, well, maybe I'm just having jitters. Maybe I don't know. And then Sal sees what happens between her and Jarrett. He's getting, and also I think more importantly, maybe getting a vibe from Mal that because when Danielle and Nick see each other, it's probably kissy, kissy, kissy all night long, right? You get these indications like, okay, I'm into my partner's into me, so this real back and forth. And Sal has some kind of stoic qualities as well. So they might both be kind of standoffish emotionally and kind of waiting for the other person, but maybe Sal's wanting. Anyway, so I could see a scenario, but I don't know, where Sal is trying to like, hey, I don't really get a vibe from you. And she's like, no, there's a vibe there. And he gets kind of frustrated and upset. And then she's like, how come you're giving me attitude right now? And then that escalates. And then in the end, the narrative is we were communicating badly, when in reality there was just something that was off about whether or not they really loved whether or not she really loved him.
And that's kind of really, yeah.
Can I just say, Mal, and I'll just put it this way. There were many times that I also just felt unheard in our arguments, and I'll keep that to ourselves, but our arguments, I felt unheard.
Okay. So it sounds like they were referring to arguments that were happening behind the scenes. He says he feels unheard. And again, that could just mean 1,000 different things, but it could fit in my dumb little narrative where he's saying, either through veiled language or straight up language, I'm not getting a vibe from you. And she would evade and say like, no, there's a vibe, or well, you don't feel a vibe from me because you're coming at me kind of strong. I'm really making up a lot of stuff. But I'm saying that the data I'm getting doesn't disconfirm. But, science is not about looking for evidence that confirms your theory. It's about looking for evidence that doesn't confirm your theory. And I mean, that's a funny way of putting it. Point is that true scientists, which I consider myself to be, understand that there are many explanations, and just because I can't imagine them or they don't feel right to me doesn't mean they're also not possible. But I will say that there's no evidence that's disconfirming my speculation.
And I'm really sorry if I made you feel that way.
I forgive you because it's like, it's in the past. It's okay.
May I?
Oh God. Now I wonder if Shake is going to say, I think y'all decided that you weren't going to get married and phoned it in the last few episodes. Look at Kyle's face. Kyle's like, why are you inserting yourself again? And Shane is like looking down at the floor saying, I don't want to be here. Let's see what Shake says.
Okay. Two things. Number one, your situation with Jarrett, that whole situation and the aftermath of that, I think that was an uncomfortable thing. Number two, your ex-girlfriend. I think as in your shoes, that's gonna sour a relationship. Once you shatter the vase, you can't put it back together.
But Shay,
The second point I don't think is true. I mean, I don't know. It could be true. But I think the first point, I think Mallory might actually be internal. She might be like, you might be right, Shake. In this instance, I don't know. We'll hear what Mal says, but what Shake said does fit within my hypothesis, which is that early on, Mal knew that there wasn't something there, and the conversation with Jarrett kind of confirmed it or exacerbated it or something. Sal saw that anyway. But that second point of the Sal ex-girlfriend thing, it did not make any sense to me. The way it was presented on the show was essentially, if I had it right, if I remember right, Sal's former partner and so according to Sal, and who knows if this is true or not, but Mallory believed him, seemingly, that for Sal, he dated a woman for a number of months in the past, was very clear to her that they were not exclusive. He told her that he was going on this show and that he might meet someone and marry her. And this former partner of his, who seemingly, according to him, had an on-off again relationship, that while Sal and Mal were together post pods, this former partner was hurt and jealous and worried that Sal was going to marry someone, and then went to the sisters and said, I'm upset, how come he's doing this? I want to be with him, or something along that. Or he led me on. And then Sal had to say, no, I didn't lead her on. I told her what was happening. And then now there could have been something very different that was going on behind the scenes. There could have been that Sal absolutely had a girlfriend, absolutely was lying to someone, maybe had a slew of women on the side, who knows. But according to what Sal was saying, that's essentially what he was saying. Mal was believing him. But then the conclusion was from Mal, if you do this again, we're done. And I thought, if he does what again? If another one of his former partners comes out of the woodwork and wants him back and is very upset, you're going to dump him? I don't understand, unless we don't know what's happening. And again, it's just part of that confusion that the host was talking about. It's like, I don't really understand what's happening here.
Who are you to provide that
I'm
reason?
just
You
saying.
don't
I'm
have
just
insight
saying
in
that's
their
my freaking
relationship.
opinion.
But it wasn't my
get it,
girlfriend either,
but-
Shake.
Whatever it was soured, whether it was on purpose or not.
Shake, he literally just said that he does not want to air out dirty laundry, stuff like that. Why do you feel a need to come in and say that?
Because we're at a reunion where we're supposed to.
No,
No,
we're,
that's not what
we're
I'm
not.
supposed to
This,
think. You're not-
the
you're
point of
putting
this is
that in.
not.
I will say that Shake is extremely comfortable in the everyone hates me place. Here, when he was on the show earlier, I think online right now, that says something about his personality. He almost pushes people to hate him. And within just a few minutes of this reunion episode being filmed, he got everyone to hate him. And I also wonder if they disliked him prior to this, because they had a lot more contact with him than we ever saw, right? And given the way he was talking, particularly even the other guys, they might just be like, ugh. So, it says something about Shake's personality. I'm not entirely sure what, but I'm guessing it has something to do with his long-term defenses that were in response to something that required that.
Thought watching the show, it's not.
Okay,
for
so
you to,
I'm completely
throw
wrong. It had nothing to do
laundry
with
out
those two
there.
things then.
I feel like you're just trying to break people down.
I'm not trying to
I don't
break people
understand.
down. I'm trying to put it out in the open because what I've seen, shut up, Shane. What I've seen is a bunch of people that were so real in the beginning turn fake as fuck as we've gone through.
Okay, actually, I said this earlier about Shake. I mean, he's kind of occasionally saying what, not the way I would say it, but that's kind of how it felt to me. Now, to my wife, it did not come across that way. But to me and Shake, which makes me feel very uncomfortable, it did. I wouldn't say fake, but I would say, as the way the co-host said, something was going on behind the scenes that was not being shown to the camera. So, I think Shake, now, does that give Shake the right to somehow blow up this whole episode with his speculations? No. Could he have said it in a different way? Yes. But I kind of agree.
this.
You've been
It's
the fakest
not.
fuck. You've been
Oh, are
the
you
fakest
kidding?
person from the
I'm the
beginning. Don't
realist.
start that,
I'm
bro.
the
Don't
realist,
start
Jared.
that.
I say the
Don't
facts.
start that.
I keep it
You've been
100,
the
bro.
fakest.
I keep it 100, bro. So Jared's like, well, and as I was saying earlier, Jared's like, you're the faker, you were the one that was faking it, which we don't know, given how honest Shake is, it does kind of make you wonder, maybe he was telling the truth through that whole scenario. It's possible, it's possible that late in the game, he decided, no, I don't think it's going to work with Deepti. It's possible that he, all those debates he was having about, because we saw an evolution to the way he described his dilemma. She seems like the one, even if he's it doesn't mean that he's a monster. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have attachment needs. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have desire to marry someone and have a companion. So you can have all of this and all that first few episode behavior and still have someone who legitimately and honestly was debating whether or not he should marry Deepti, even though he wasn't really attracted to her. So anyway, it's possible that, my point is that we saw kind of an evolution to the way he talked about Deepti and his lack of passion. It changed over time. I don't know if there was directly kind of a vector to that, but it seemed there were times when he was like, well, who needs passion? I'm really into her. She's great. I feel so safe with her. She really likes me, and I really like her. We respect each other. I feel comfortable. We have the same history, the same culture. But to my memory, I feel like that evolved over time to, I don't think this can work. And he's like kind of pleading with one of the guys that he was talking to about like, how can you make that work? And someone's like, well, you can make it work. He's like, I don't know if it can work. So, so his contention here that he's the realist, he keeps it 100, bro. Could be true. But it's also possible that he was. I mean, at the very least, it seems incredibly unlikely that they did not have a conversation with each other about the yes/no at the altar at least a few days before, because the way that it played out at the altar, how fast of a turnaround he gave it at the end. So there was at least some quote unquote withholding of information at the end, and maybe even throughout. I mean, given what we've seen, there's a scenario where he just hooked up, he just proposed to Deepti because he wanted to continue being on the show. I mean, of everyone on the show, he seems the most interested in internet fame. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell.
I've always kept this completely 100.
Come on, dog. Don't do that.
Yeah,
'Cause you're not.
We can do
You're
that.
not. You're not. You came on here for all the wrong reasons, and you know that. And everybody can see through how shallow you are.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. I mean, he admitted that he was being shallow. So literally everyone there agrees. And I'm guessing every single audience member watching the show, including his parents, are looking at someone who is quote unquote shallow. I mean, it was clear. I think he takes pride in how shallow he is. So the fact that he's defending himself right now, I don't understand.
I know so.
Oh, absolutely.
Bro, we all have our preferences. No, I won't apologize for that, okay? I will be honest about what those things are.
Joke.
All right, let's just get back on track.
Let's just get back on track, even though I completely pulled us off track. I'm not winning this conversation. Let's end it right now. Now, he did say, I have my preferences, and I'm entitled to that. That's true. How do you communicate about that? And also, what are your preferences based on? It's fine to have a preference of, I want my partner, I want to be really attracted to my partner. And I don't know how to put it into words, but that person I'm attracted to and that person I'm not. Yeah, yes, okay. But what if your preferences are based on misogyny? Like, you're 33, I'm 32, you're too old for me. There is no logical reason for someone to say that. That would be based on reality. It has to be based on misogyny or trying to show off or immaturity or, I cannot imagine a scenario that I could be convinced of where someone could logically justify being 32, meeting a 33-year-old and saying, you're too old for me. No, I'm going to scratch you off the list. The only thing that I think I would accept is, look, 33-year-old, I am a very immature 32. And although I wouldn't mind being with you, you would hate being with me. So, but that's not what he's saying. There was none of that there. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.